Coming up,
a lot of what moms do is invisible work, and that includes the shift before taking your kids to daycare or school, the shift when they're home in the evening. So you're working all hours that you're awake, and then oftentimes even when you're asleep, because you get that mom in the middle of the night and you have to go through.
Hey y'all.
Hey mamas.
Welcome back to Raising Mama.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Chelsea.
I'm a divorced mama of 2 toddlers sharing custody while running my own business.
And I'm a full-time nurse, pregnant with my second baby and married to a stay-at-home dad.
Join us while we talk about the most pressing issues related to postpartum and new parenthood. This podcast is brought to you by Raising Mama, a bamboo baby brand dedicated to empowering moms during postpartum and raising awareness about maternal mental health. Raising Mama's buttery soft bamboo pajamas aren't just designed to help babies sleep better, they're made to support mothers too. And for every pair sold, a portion of the proceeds is donated to Postpartum Support International. As a thank you for listening, enjoy 20% off your next order with code RaisingMamaVillage at checkout, because we're all in this together. Today, we're talking about why division of labor is the #1 conflict for new parents.
So, Megan, tell me about your division of labor in your household.
Oh my gosh. This is such a hot topic for me, and I'm so excited to talk about it. I don't think we've had a full episode on it yet, although we have brought it up a number of times. But it's close to my heart because I have made some big life decisions in the last 2 years. And a lot of it has to do with division of labor. But let me just give you a little background about me. So I grew up in South Africa. I was born there. My family was there since the 1700s. And in South Africa, much like in the US, but I feel like South Africa is a little bit more conservative. It was definitely like conservative in the sense of traditional values and such. And so when I was a kid, and honestly still now, my mom did 100% of the housework. I mean, I would help her, fold my dad's socks as a kid, and it had to be done in like a very specific way where like you like first turn them inside out. I mean, so that when you put them on, like it was a whole thing. And like ironing his handkerchiefs, serving him tea 6 times a day on a tray with a teapot with milk, cooking dinner. He worked, but she worked too. She was the school librarian. And anyways, I grew up watching this dynamic of like almost servitude and later too, after we moved to the US, my mom had a part-time job, and then she had a full-time job, and she continued this labor. It was the mental labor. It was the emotional labor, raising the kids, cleaning the house. And so when I met my partner, I did much of the same things for him. I remember when I was in my early 20s with my, later husband, but like, when we were still girlfriend, boyfriend, I would like do his laundry for him and like clean his apartment for him. And I guess the point of this is that what we see as kids has a big impact on how we then face relationships later in life. And then when I became a mom, this all like exploded in my face. So that is my background. Coming into this conversation, we have a great chat with a licensed psychotherapist named Christina. She's also a children's book author. And, that's my perspective. But Chelsea, your perspective is very different.
Well, I don't think I'll go back to the 1700s, but
you always make fun of me in these.
A short blurb about my family. My family is pretty actually traditional too. My mom was mostly a stay-at-home mom. My dad was mostly the one who worked. They mostly did the more traditional gender roles, but they both worked their butts off. Like it was definitely a competition, not a competition, but you could not give an award to who was working harder. Mm-hmm. But I think there was a definite understanding of like both parties are working very, very hard. And certainly there was never a like big deal. Like my dad was a Girl Scout leader, or like my dad took me bra shopping, or like my mom would figure out how to fix the tire or whatever. Like if things needed to be crossed, it wasn't necessarily a big deal, but traditionally they fell into the more traditional roles. That's my background. When it comes to division of labor, I definitely don't have the mindset that they should be doing 50% of what I'm doing, because they're a different person. They operate differently. So it's unreasonable that they are going to be a clone copy of me because they're different. And then the second thing is, hopefully you do a ton of work beforehand to know, like, what can you really tolerate? What can't you tolerate? And then like the third thing is, when it comes to division of labor, when you get into like, to me, and here's the thing, and GL would say this, I do more work. And that's mostly because that's my essence, dude. Like I do a full-time night shift job. I have Raising Mama. I run a daycare. I totally have a huge social account. Like my day, I could never expect anyone to live my day, to sleep 2 hours a day, to be hyper productive all the time. That's an unreasonable expectation. But I never really feel like, oh, I'm way overdoing more than GL, because I feel like the respect is really high. Like he respects what I'm bringing to the table, and I respect what he's bringing to the table. And it's always like, let me do some more for you, because thank God you did this thing. And thank God you did this thing. And it's not really this like, oh my God, why can't he do the things I can do? I never expect him to do the things I can do, because he's not me. And if I need him to be doing something that is very me, like I have this giant family, I have giant family traditions where we like have 75 person, Thanksgivings, like then I do take the time and I teach him, and I don't expect him to learn it in a day, because it didn't take me a day to learn it. It took 18 years of learning it. And what a beautiful man who's like, I'm going to incorporate your holidays because this is important to me. And so I think there's a lot more patience and a lot more just like loving them for who they are.
Yes, but
And that is, to me, I don't think of it as 50-50.
I have met Gianluca,
Yeah.
obviously, because you're my best friend. And I also went to high school with him, much like you did. And he is self-aware, though. He's self-aware. He is growth-oriented. He can be a receptive listener. And he's a nice guy. I don't know. Like, I think you chose well. I think you chose well.
But that was the pre-work. That was the failing. That was the 10 years of dating and really being like, actually for me, for my life. And how weird is it? I wanted a stay-at-home dad. That is not the normal thing that women are looking for, is like some emotionally intelligent, good with kids, doesn't want a big career guy. Like, but for me, I knew that was a really good match for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have known it if I didn't. Like I had to kind of break away from my old young self and what I thought I wanted, what people told me I wanted, and actually try on so many different styles of living and be like, oh no, that's what works for me.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a great episode for if you're pregnant, thinking about what's going to happen after the baby comes, if you're thinking about having a baby, or like if you're literally smack in the middle of a division of labor catastrophe and you need to know what to do. So let's hear what Christina Furnival has to say about the division of labor. Before we dive in, hit the subscribe button for more expert insights and honest conversations on Raising Mama podcast.
On today's episode, we'll be diving into why division of labor is the #1 conflict for new parents, exploring the mental load, emotional labor, and how these challenges often fall disproportionately on moms. We'll also discuss tools and techniques for rebalancing responsibilities in a way that benefits both partners. Joining us is licensed psychotherapist and children's book author Christina Furnival. With experience working in hospitals and outpatient clinics, Christina brings a compassionate, solution-focused approach to helping families. As the author of the award-winning Capable Kiddos series, she's passionate about helping parents and children understand themselves better to navigate life's challenges. You can find her books on Amazon, her blog Real Life Mama on her website, and her counseling services on ChristinaFurnival.com, and Instagram at Capable Kiddo Books and at Christina.Furnival. All right. Welcome, Christina.
Welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Gosh, I need to have you around with me, introducing me everywhere I go. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you on, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic because it's a big one for me. Chelsea and I have like very different backgrounds and situations when it comes to division of labor, because she has like literally the world's most awesome husband.
Wonderful.
And she can speak for herself, but my kids are always my kids are always listening to this, but I've had some issues, not just with my my ex, but also with my dad. This is like a very huge thing, in my family, totally uneven division of labor, and it's affected my life profoundly. And, specific to our audience, it is something that really, really, really got exacerbated after I had my first kid. So let's talk about it. You're a licensed psychotherapist. You are the expert here. So why is the division of labor the number one conflict for new parents?
It comes up in almost every therapy session that I have with moms. So I used to do therapy with kids, and now I tend to see women and moms, and every single mom that I work with talks about this. And it comes up in different ways, shapes, and forms, but it's such a big problem because I think it goes back even to what you were just saying. You were describing in your family of origin with your dad, there are patterns, generational societal patterns that we pick up along the way. And if you think even before a child is born, when we are preconception, the responsibility often falls already on the female for birth control, for cycle tracking, for planning when to do the deed in order to try and conceive. And then once you have conceived, the appointments are for the mom, of course, because it's her body, but oftentimes the father isn't attending appointments with her, or like the classes that you have to take ahead of time. You know that as a mom, you have to go to those. For the dad, it seems like it's optional. Some dads do, but you don't see a room full of dads when you go to those classes. And then you think of even baby showers. They lean towards the mom. And the idea that gets implanted all along the way is that parenting is mom's job. And that includes housekeeping a lot of the time, and like the home managing side of things. There's been research that even in couples where they split 50-50 tasks or had a balance like that, pre-kids, that once children were born, dads did 4 hours less work per week in the household. So dads immediately stepped back, even once there was more work to be done, because now there's a whole nother human on the scene. And that's from couples where they were balanced ahead of time. So in couples where it's already unbalanced and then you add kids on the scene, and you think about parenthood is emotional, mental, physical work all day long, 24 hours for the rest of forever. That's heavy. And if you're carrying the brunt of that, that's a really big challenge. And then also, when we're talking to division of labor, we're actually talking about more themes than that. We're talking about our values. We're talking about our traditions. We're talking about intimacy. We're talking about beliefs around gender roles, respect, money, and like kind of where our values stand with all of that. So it's such a complex, interwoven topic that like division of labor is almost just a symptom of. But so it's a really big topic, and it makes sense that 98, 99, 100% of relationships go through rocky times when the kids come on the scene.
I love that you say that, Christina, because it is comforting to know that like everyone's going through it, because it does seem like sometimes it can be isolating. And I wonder, like for myself, because, Megan's always like, Chelsea and John Luca, they have such great, division of labor. Like,
I've seen it at your house. I'm just like, what is going on? Like,
but it's also like she said, that if we're in a society that's maybe predisposed to already having it like, of course, women do the parenting or the whatever, even in families like mine where we really try hard to like split the labor evenly, what would you say are maybe misconceptions that couples have about like splitting duties at home? You know, where they think they're doing it, but it's like, ooh, this is sort of the misconception that's going on once you start getting into therapy with them.
Well, I think the goal of 50-50 is probably unrealistic. And I think if you're really driving that home, you're going to fall short and then you're going to be upset about it. So I think recognizing that balance doesn't mean exactly equal. It means more equitable. And that also means an ebb and a flow and a give and a take. Gender roles have led to divisions of labors where women, where our identity is more tied to nurturing and housekeeping. You know, you think of Susie Homemaker, you think of like Pleasantville, sort of kept together on top of all the things. That's more tied into our identity than it is tied into the male identity. And I think sometimes then that division of labor splits into those roles, whether or not we're better at it, whether or not we like it. And the same can be true on the male side. You know, maybe he really likes cooking, but that's something that you've taken over without even realizing, because you were preparing the baby food and you were nursing. And then slowly but surely, as years have gone by, all of a sudden you're doing all the meal prep and the grocery shopping and the cleaning for it. And actually, he really liked to cook, but that's something that kind of he's been taken out of. We also, there's this paradox that I find with the women that I work with, myself included, with my mother especially, of I want to see more from my partner. I want to see that they're helping more, doing more, but I don't want to give up any control around the things that I'm better at, faster at, more adept at. And so it's this kind of maternal gatekeeping where we're like, do more, but wait, you're doing it wrong. So I'll just do it. And so kind of this push and pull where we consider ourselves an expert and we consider them the apprentice. And if the apprentice doesn't do it our way or fast enough, then it's not good enough. So then we take over, but then we resent them for that. So I think if we can recognize in this split, if we are like our role in it, our hand in it, because it's so easy to blame our partners when they fall short in our eyes. But we have a role to play in the drama too. And how have we been enabling incompetence, or how have we been complicit in allowing them to slack off? And then,
right.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Megan? And but
we're
the idea
playing a role. Just as much as they're playing a role, we're playing a role. You know, it's not just them playing a role. It's like, what role are we also leaning into?
Yeah.
This is the side where I'm like, oh man, yeah, we're interviewing a therapist. So like there's going to be some accountability here. But it's tough. It's tough. Like I'm just thinking back to my situation because I can definitely relate to the wanting control and the wanting to do it better. But I think it can also be frustrating when I'm also learning, right? But I've done like the prep work, you know, I know how to use a smartphone and like Google stuff, and I join the mommy groups and I, like so that I have a forum if I need to ask a quick question or something. But it can be frustrating if like you're not seeing that, like they don't know how, but it's like, listen, I didn't know how yesterday either. Like, why can't you pick up the phone? And like, how do you then like force, your partner? It can feel a lot like mothering someone else, because now, you're learning yourself, but now you have to teach someone how to learn or nag someone to learn or to figure it out. So I don't know. It's tough because like I feel like there's a balance where you want to take accountability because you're like, I should just kind of let them go figure it out, and maybe then under pressure they'll have more motivation to Google it or to just start trying things, right? But then the pain of hearing your baby cry is also very real and visceral, So.
Yeah. And I think as long as it's not an emergency, we kind of have to remind ourselves that it's not an emergency. There are times when we let our babies cry if we're in the middle of doing something that we can't get to them that moment, but we know our intentions and we know our efforts and we know I'll be there in 2 minutes. I just have to like use the bathroom real quick. And we're not in our partner's head. So it's hard to know, like, are they about to be on it? Are they going to let this go too long? But in most cases, it's not an emergency. And we do have to kind of coach ourselves through that. Our partners, if they have jobs, likely they're pretty good at what they do and they're smart people and they're capable humans. And it is that balance, like you just said, Megan, of, okay, how do I let them flounder to figure it out so that they grow in capabilities? How do I empower that without doing it in a resentful way of like, well, fine, you figure it out, right? Like, good luck to you. But like that might be happening inside. And how can we express that in a more teamwork way? Of like, okay, well, this is a task that you should know how to do. And it's important that maybe I don't give you all the steps so that way you can remember it better. Because if I tell you each time, it's like I'm a Google Maps to your destination. You're not going to learn the route. It's just too easy. So like, let's just say you figure it out this time. And if it works, great. And if it's different from the way I do it, great. And we can kind of, like a team, we can talk about it later. We can reassess. We can kind of reflect on, did that work? Did it not work? And I think that's where ideally all of us are having these conversations before we ever have kids. Most of us don't. And then even if we did, people are historically unreliable narrators and unreliable predictors of how they will react in events. We think we'll do something and then an actual event happens and we do the opposite. So, but having these chats ahead of time can help us to reflect on, oh, well, we thought we would do that. That's not what happened. It either worked or it didn't. What would we change? What can we learn from that? But if we're at the point now where, okay, we're married, we have kids, things aren't working, then hopefully there's an opportunity for teamwork chats of like, it's me and you against the problem. It's not me versus you, because no one wants that in their home environment. No one wants that for their children's well-being. Happier marriages with more equitable division of labor leads to better sex life. It leads to less depression. It leads to children that do better in school and have fewer behavioral issues. So, if we're in the relationship and we have no plans to separate, how can we make this work? And if we have plans to separate, how can we now co-parent in an equitable way as well?
I'm going to throw in kind of a side question.
Sure.
Because I'm curious, what challenges do men have, like on the other side of this, in your therapy sessions? Because I'm assuming kind of the mom is frustrated. She's maybe resentful. She's, grappling with the control issue. But on the guy's side, like what is he usually feeling?
That's a fabulous question. I am not an expert in men's mental health. I usually just see the moms. But the flip side, from what I've read, is they're unhappy. They feel like they're getting nagged. Like that's their biggest complaint in marriage is my wife is nagging me. However, nagging is just like a not so nice word for reminding. And so many men say, I'd do it if she just asked. She just needs to remind me. And so like then they're creating a situation in which they're asking for what they're getting, but then they're unhappy about what they're getting. But they're also getting wives that are unhappy. They're getting worse sex life. They're getting just discontent in the house, stonewalling or, cold shouldering from the person that they decided they wanted to spend their life with. And that's not a good feeling either. And I have to think it would feel really bad to not be aware of your own home life, to not know who your children's doctor is, to not know who their teacher is, what size shoe they wear, what clothes they like. That has to feel, I don't know, like you're floating in space a little bit. It feels nice to have information and to feel grounded and to know about your.
You think. I'm gonna put a no comment there, but
yeah, I think there is a lot of willful ignorance, and it's been allowed. The dad's role. You think to the 50s, so long as he didn't beat his wife, he was a good husband and dad. right? Like that,
Yeah.
as long as you didn't lay a hand, you were the man of the house. Good job. Well done.
I like to call it selective incompetence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Christina, here's my question. So what I'm hearing is, you guys are talking about like ideally, how do you communicate in a way, right, that leads towards us on a common team figuring stuff out. So it's not nagging, or it's not like one person saying like, I need you helping me, but then like won't let them help. So I do this, so you tell me if this is bad or good.
Okay.
But usually I just leave. Like, like I just go like, so like, you gotta be with Layla today or whatever it is. And then I'm like, I'm gone. And then I like go do whatever it is. Like I find like if I'm in the house, it's not as productive. And if it's something really new, like I had just, me and my husband are starting this daycare, and I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. I needed this like 20-page contract written by Monday. And I was like, can you do it? And it's like I gave him like 6 points that I thought were really important that I wanted it. But I usually, when I do that, I write it, and I just say like, I always say like Chelsea's thoughts, and then I just leave the note, and then I leave for like the day, and then I come back, and then I'm always really happy with whatever it is, because I also know it was like, or I would have done nothing. I don't know. So how's the option of just like you leave and not leave?
He's a unicorn.
I don't
He's
mean
a
like
unicorn.
meanly leave. There's no like animosity, but like I'm just gonna go to work, or I'm just gonna like whatever it is that I can't do it. Then I let him do it.
I think that sounds like the same thing you would do if it was your mom or anyone else that you fully trusted to be capable. You would not handhold through the whole process. I think that's great. And the fact that it's not like, well, bye, I'm gone, good luck. It's like, he's got it. I gotta go, and I can't do these things.
Or I leave like a note. Like if I think it's something like, there's no way he's gonna know. Like sometimes, like I also was like, babe, I really need a shed. So I told him what I needed the shed for, and like where and what I was imagining it, but like that was it. I wasn't like, so find the dimensions and the cost and the price and he was just like, okay. Like I don't know. Like I feel like I gave him some of the information that I can't imagine he would know all by himself, like what I'm thinking about this shed for.
Okay, so this I think is related to mental load, which we want to talk about next.
Go for it.
Because what you're describing is like you allowing him to take on the mental load of like whatever you're giving him, which is part of like the task management, right? So mental load, I didn't even like know what the mental load was until I had kids. It's probably been a term that's been around for a while, and I just like entered child world and was like, wait, this is a thing, and this is so validating. The word is so validating. But Christina, can you define like what it is, and the fact that moms carry it a lot, and why why it's often unrecognized?
Yeah, and it's unrecognized by both partners and by ourselves. I hear so often, oh, I was home all day and I don't know what I even did. Well, you did a lot. You did a freak ton. First of all, you kept your child alive. Second of all, there were so many things running through your mind that you were orchestrating. So the mental load, it kind of falls under a bigger label of invisible work. A lot of what moms do is invisible work, and that includes the shift before taking your kids to daycare or school, the shift when they're home in the evening. So you're working all hours that you're awake, and then oftentimes even when you're asleep, because you get that mom in the middle of the night and you have to go through. And the mental load during all of that time could be planning birthday parties, could be making sure you're getting all the teacher gifts, that you're on top of the consumption of clothing, underwear, shoes, school supplies, the things that you need to restock both in the house and for the kids. You're making sure that when the toilet paper rolls empty on the holder, that there's more in the cabinet. You know that there's more there. If it's not there, you know that you've got more in the garage. It's the constant awareness of all the moving parts happening inside of your head. And I think again, kind of going back to our previous talking about maternal gatekeeping, sometimes we kind of hold all that. That's my realm. I'm really good at that. I like being productive. I like being in the know. And so I'm in charge of all of this. But in doing so, and especially if it grows bit by bit more over time, we're kind of blocking our partners from that. And we're not always sharing what is happening in our head. And it involves the conception and the planning and the execution of it all. And that's just so much. That's so much to carry, especially by yourself. And if your husband is part of that mental load, which actually I don't remember the percentage, but there's research that said a lot of women consider their husband to be more stressful than their children because it's as if he should be a capable adult, but then he's not. But so making the invisible work visible is one of the first steps. And that's what you're doing, Chelsea, by writing your list, by leaving these notes. You're like, hey, this is what I'm grappling with, and I'd love a partner in figuring this out. You're like, even if I'm still going to take on the bulk of it, I want you in the know, and then we can have these conversations. And when I leave, my husband's really thoughtful too. So let's say he goes out of town for the week. On the Sunday before, we're looking at groceries and meals together. Like, okay, what am I going to make during the week? What's going to be the easiest, considering that he'll be gone and I'll have all 3 kids at home. And so we'll make a meals list together. I'm usually the one that orders it, but I do Instacart. So I kind of outsource and automate that to help out. And then he leaves notes and love notes for the kids all around the house. He makes sure like our trash cans are set, all the windows are locked. Like he does a lot to help. So on the flip side, when I go out for the day or stay out overnight, which I think I've only done once in my parenting life, I don't want to take charge or take over doing things for him, but I want to be equally as helpful. So if there's something that I know he won't know, I'll leave that information for him or just make sure to tell him. And it was funny, the other day, our kids spent the night at my parents' house. We had a date night, and my parents kept the kids overnight. And the next morning when we were picking up the kids, my husband, Tom, grabbed the pack and play and the noise machines, the door monkeys, the pillows, the stuffies, all the things. So he gathered all the stuff we had taken over and he loaded it up in the car. And we were going to have a date night the next week as well. My mom goes, oh, well, now that you've loaded those up, you know what to bring next time. And he didn't even know what to say to that because he's like, I already know what to bring. Like Christy didn't tell me all these things that we need for our kids. I know what we need for our kids. And he's like, it might take me a little longer to kind of go through the play-by-play to make sure I have everything. I might forget something, but he's like, I know it just as well as her. And again, that kind of bounces back to like we were saying before about parents, and the model that we've had is my mom even corrects my dad when he's playing with our kids. No, Jim, don't do that. Oh, Jim, they want this. And there's just this expert apprentice unbalance in there.
All right. We're going to pause the show for just a minute because I want to share something personal with you. After having my first baby, I felt completely unprepared for how challenging postpartum life would be. I quickly realized that society just doesn't give moms the support we deserve. That's why I created Raising Mama, to make those early days just a little bit easier. Raising Mama pajamas are made from the softest bamboo fabric, engineered with micro gaps to help babies sleep better and give mamas a much needed boost. The prints feature uplifting messages like, Mama, I wished for you, and it's okay to ask for help. Phrases that are meant to prevent those negative thought cycles that so many of us struggle with during postpartum. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want to give you a special 20% off with the code Raising Mama Village. Plus, every time you buy a pair, we donate $1 to Postpartum Support International to support maternal mental health. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Now let's get back to the show. That was a great impression of your mom, by the way. I don't know your mom, but like I could envision that perfectly.
Okay. I have an argument here, though.
Okay.
Because a person is coming to mind that I know. She's from a different culture, right? The culture is overtly like it would be extremely rude not to serve the men first. She does the same job as like her brother. Her brother gets paid double, and it's known because she's the woman. So she's just these are like, boom, the cultural norms that she knows is okay with, likes. And I think to a certain degree, that's like an extreme sort of thing. A lot of us are raised with these, right? And so you get into this marriage and you might think, oh, yeah, like I do want to be the stay-at-home mom, right? Like I do want to be the CEO. And then it's only maybe 5 years or whatever, like into it, that you go, oh, Jesus, like, I'm reevaluating this relationship that I've created, right? Where I'm the CEO of kid stuff, you're the CEO of work stuff. This is a very traditional role that I'm saying. But I feel like the huge problem is for other relationships, you are the CEO, right? So if you're the one who's doing 90% of the kid stuff, I think it's fair to be like, hey, I put the kid to bed this way every single night. So I need you to do it kind of my way because I don't need you messing up everything so that, you know what I mean? Like 10% of the time they stay up till, 11 p.m. and do this and do that because you truly are the CEO. And then I think the second problem is, and I think this happens to women a lot, is if you start being the CEO of something, right? And let's say 5 years down, you're like, hey, you know what? I want to be the one who works full time. Well, they've done 5 years at working at a company. And now the amount of money that the family is used to is like, I'm just making it up, $500,000 a year. And even if you went right into the workforce and worked 60 hours a week, because you don't have 5 years of growing in a company, you could never switch places with your husband, or I'm being very stereotypical here, but you could never switch anymore. You're like stuck in the CEO position because every year that you move forward, it makes it harder and harder to switch positions. And this is true for the typical male position as well. Like they're stuck being the provider. So it's like, what happens if A, you are the CEO, you do 99% of it. Like, is it okay to just be like, you kind of do need to do it my way? And then B, what happens if you want to change things, but you can't really change things anymore? I don't know. What do you say to women in that kind of situation?
That sounds really tough. And it is the sense and feeling of being stuck is really uncomfortable. I'd say there's always room for change. And especially if you and your partner are both willing to make changes, you can shift the dynamic. We're caught in a dance and we all do the same moves until someone does a different move. And then that other person has to adjust. And ideally you guys adjust together. But if you're in a system that, which we are in America, that does make it very hard for working mothers to succeed at the same pace and rate as working women who are not mothers or working men who are fathers or not. That's kind of the tier of the rates that you might make. That is really hard. A lot of women go into more feminine jobs. Therapy is one of them, that it's a more woman dominated field. And I think in some way you have more grace than when you come back to work because they kind of understand the push and pull of it all, but not all companies do that. And if you've gone for like an engineering degree and you've worked your way up to a certain level, and then you decide to take time off because that actually works better for your family at one point in time, and now at this point in time, it actually doesn't work better for your family. It's tough to navigate, but it's not impossible. And if one of you does want to make a shift, and then I think that's a conversation to have together and really try and work through how you can make that plausible.
And what if you can't make that shift? Is it reasonable for a person to be like, hey, I am the CEO. You got to do it my way because I'm taking on 90% of, you know what I mean? I'm going to be cleaning up your mess. Like that feeling that you say with that women have all the time. Like it's more stressful for them to do it because now they're doing twice the work. And then they know that they're going to be on the hook because that's how the division is. And that's how it's always going to be.
Yeah, I think it's understandable for the person who's like fully in charge of the home life and the kids to want things done the way that they do them because they've figured out that that's the most effective way for them to do it. But kids act differently with each parent. And just because it does work a certain way with you doesn't mean it wouldn't work another way with someone else. I think of like the dishwasher. A lot of women are very particular about how the dishwasher is loaded, and they don't like if their partner kind of puts things in the air quote wrong spots. But as long as those dishes are getting clean, and that's the goal. I think sometimes we have to figure out what's worth the battles and where we can let things go. There's a famous therapy couple called the Gottmans. And if you haven't ever read their stuff or followed them on Instagram, it's definitely worth doing. I love their stuff. But they talk about
a whole podcast about the Gottmans.
Oh, yeah? About 70% of conflicts are unsolvable. And so I think if you recognize that you can really only attack 30% of the problems, like you have to let more stuff go. And you are not a perfect human. Your partner is not a perfect human. And if you guys can align on those 30% to work as a team against the problem, whatever that may be, and in this case, maybe it's that you really understand what works best, taking the time to express that to your partner and really kind of show them, this is my conception, planning, execution. This is how I do this all. I'm going to give this to you, and I'm going to hope you're going to take it on board because I've already worked out the issues. I've already worked out the kinks. Try it my way first. And then if that doesn't work for you, then put your own spin on it. But by taking the time to teach them from start to finish, if that's something you're wanting to do, then that's like the long-term gain over the short-term struggle. And I think sometimes we don't want to, it's going to take me so much longer to explain it to you than it is for me to just do it. But that's a short-term win over long-term loss. So then it's that sort of a balance.
Yeah, I have a thought here because Chelsea, like, I mean, I was a CEO of like a company, and that's like unrelated to the CEO, like mom scenario. But what I'm thinking of is, you know, when I left, for example, there was a new CEO in my place, and it's not like I was going to go tell her how to do her job. It's like new CEO takes over. And I feel like a lot of this division of labor stuff, like just having that business background, you have to focus more on like end goals and how I've experienced this now that my husband and I are, you know, separated, nearly divorced. That was a big transition for me because it's like, imagine that role changing, but now I can't be CEO of his house. Like the opposite. I don't know anything about what's going on in that house. And that has shifted me to focus on the much, much bigger picture things. Like, are they getting enough sleep? And like, you know, just setting my gauges on the kids and how they're doing and how well that CEO or household is being run, really just on like the basics. Like, are they loved? Are they getting their basic needs met? Like, are they eating enough? Are they eating healthy? You know, and the rest, I just like totally had to relinquish control. But I think that is obviously a very, you know, kind of extreme example. And it was one that obviously wasn't my choice, but I think that it kind of like runs parallel to what do we do, you know, or what would we do if you guys had to flip and someone had to just take over? Like there is a lot, I think, that you have to let go because otherwise you're still CEO and then you're doing two jobs.
It sounds like you're pulling a Chelsea. You just left. You're like, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. But, okay. Next question.
No, I didn't mean leave. I meant leave, like you leave them to the job of doing whatever. That's what I meant.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on. So here's the thing. Here's the scenario, Christina. So let's say, all right, you came into the world naive, as we all do. And you are living your role of being that typical mom in charge of all the mom duties, and your husband was doing the typical role of the male duties, and you decide it's time for a change. Like, how do you approach this conversation without it just like escalating into resentment or conflict? Or is it even possible? Like if the partner doesn't want to change, they're like, yeah, you married me. This is the role I said I would do. I'm doing it. How do you start a conversation with your partner when you've been doing things for so long in a certain way?
I think the best way to start any conversation that you think might be tricky is gently, right? So you don't want to come in attacking. As soon as you put up your emotional dukes, they will too. So I'm sure you guys have heard of I statements before, but the idea of I statements is really helpful. And it's basically the idea of owning your own stuff. So the message that you're relaying is not changed, but you're saying it in a way where you're taking responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings and not placing blame on them. So if it's like you're thinking, you're lazy and I'm so worn out and you need to pick up your side of the deal and I'm ready to work again because being home all the time is too freaking much for me. That's what you're feeling or thinking, but that's not how you're going to come across and say it if you want them to hopefully have any chance of responding in a less defensive way. You're going to come at them with something along the lines of, first of all, you're looking for a time where it's calm, where the kids are not wreaking havoc in the house. Maybe it's after they've gone to bed. Maybe it's while you're having dinner, just the two of you afterwards. So in a moment of calm, you want to set the stage for the best chance of success. And then coming in gently of, hey, I've been thinking recently that as I thought I would be fulfilled by motherhood, and in some ways I absolutely am, I'm really missing the side of me that I had before we had kids. And I'm wondering how I can start to get back into the workforce, recognizing that it means there's going to be a shift in our family and in the responsibilities at home with the kids and with the house. But also hoping then that I get to be a fuller version of myself and also provide and contribute to the income. And that might create for us some more opportunities for vacations or more fun in life. Because I just feel like we've been living a slog recently. And what do you think about that? Right. So that like the message is the same, but delivered in such a nicer way it's like, here's my conversation. And then you're like, oh, okay, here's my response versus like, this is what I'm dealing with. Take it,
Yeah, let's do a version of that with the division of labor where he's like taking out the trash and helping with the dishes, but you're handling like literally everything else.
Yeah, I think with that, and this is interesting to note, is guys tend to take on tasks that have leisure components, like running errands to go pick up something, like yard work, things where they get to choose at what time they do them, whereas women tend to take on the tasks that are like doctor's appointments, drop-offs, pickups, meals, things that like we are slave to a clock for. And that's really interesting to note and kind of reflect on your own family if that's the case, because that might be a good starting point. And figuring out also like, am I doing the things that suit my skill set the best? Is he doing the things that suit his skill set best? But yeah, opening that up of like, hey, hon, I don't know if you know, but I've been feeling really stressed out and bogged down by the amount of things going on in my head. I feel like I'm not thinking straight. I just have so much on my plate. Can we like chat about what's going on in these next 2 weeks so I can figure out how to offload some of those and you can pick them up so that we can feel more balanced and I don't feel like so much is on me. So again, it's still laying it out there, but in a teamwork approach and it's like a confident expectation that they will help. Let's work on that together, how we will figure that part out.
Well, this begs to ask, so what if you do this many, 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 many times and they're not getting it? Do you just give up and you're like, okay, like I stated my needs. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's a certain point where you're hitting your head against the wall. If that's the way things are headed with that partner. And again, maybe reflection is necessary. And have you been as teamwork focused in your delivery? Maybe you haven't been as kind or gentle in your approach. Maybe you didn't choose the right times, but again, it's not all on you. You could set the stage perfectly and you could have a partner that's like, heck no, I like how things are. And actually, side note, I read somewhere that guys can relax. Their heart rate calms the most when they're relaxing if their partner is doing work, like up and doing things. If the woman joins him in leisure, he's less relaxed. So there is something biologically where men do relax more and do, receive more joy out of chill time when we're busy than if we actually relax with them. So I think there are biological.
That's annoying.
I know, annoying. Like that.
But there are biological differences that I think can help us go, oh, he's not just being a jerk. Like there are some things that are different. When we're sleeping, women are primed to wake up to the sound of their baby crying. I think the noise that most likely wakes up men is wind. Wind on the house. Because then maybe, I don't know, they're thinking about the roof. I don't know. But so there are differences. They're not just out to be crappy husbands and bad guys. But if we can draw awareness around it, highlight the invisible work, make that look visible, have these open conversations that are honest, where you're expecting a partner. If they can step into that and you guys can work into that, fabulous. If that is just not happening, I would absolutely seek therapy. There are great couples therapists. And like I mentioned, the Gottmans, I would look for a Gottman certified therapist. I think their approach is both super effective and compassionate, but I would appeal to potentially the more logic-minded male species because it's very structured and very science-based. So it's not just like, oh, we're going to go to a therapist and cry and talk about our feelings. Like, no, they've got an approach that actually has been proven. They have percentages about why things work and why things don't. And, actually, this takes me to Chelsea with, if you have a partner that isn't accepting of what you've kind of laid your cards out on the table, it takes me back to the Gottman's approach of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And they talk about 4, I guess, attitudes in marriages that are predictive of divorce. And they're criticism, content, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And so criticism is like hurling insults, attacking the person's character. So instead of saying like, I don't know, I wish you would pick up more around the house, it's like, you're lazy. So it's like labeling them, insulting them. Contempt is the biggest predictor of divorce on its own, but it's disrespecting. It's like the eye rolls, the scoffs, it's mocking, like, oh, you think you're so blah, blah, blah. And the criticism, the insults often lead to the defensiveness. The contempt behaviors often lead to the stonewalling. And so if you're finding that's kind of what you're up against, or that you might bring it to the table respectfully, but then you get caught up in the tornado of that sort of back and forth, I would absolutely seek the help of a therapist, because likely your patterns are just so negative and hostile. It's not good for you. It's not good for him. It's not good for the household environment. It's not good for the children. I would seek support.
Love a good Gottman. Gottman stories are my favorite.
Yeah. The defensiveness one is tough because I feel like, again, I'm not the therapist, so I am just speaking my mind.
Go for it.
I am one person, but I feel like men are like really defensive. I don't know. Like, I feel like you like almost have to like coddle them. Like and that's like, it was enraging for me at times, because it's like, I can take some constructive criticism, you know what I mean? Like, just tell me, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's like the atmosphere these days with there being so much, with, fourth wave feminism and or just, they feel like they can feel very attacked. I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's not just me either. Like this is all of my conversations with my friends over the last like 5 years that have been grappling with these issues, and the common thread, and I'm not talking like 4 horsemen level of defensiveness necessarily. I'm talking about like a kind of more normal, workable, not necessarily going to lead to divorce, but still definitely a problem level of defensiveness. And I guess I was just kind of curious on your thoughts from the mom, the sort of, woman's perspective, not to be like excluding anyone, but like how to manage that. How do you talk to someone when they're being defensive? Because as hard as you try sometimes with Gottman techniques, like sometimes you still get it back,
Yeah, well, if you think about defensiveness, it's protective, right? So you're like putting up your shield to reflect or bounce back whatever's come at you. And underneath that would be insecurities or vulnerabilities, because anger and defensiveness are protective. They're secondary emotions over whatever's underneath. And especially with men, boys don't cry, right? Toughen up, grow a pair. There's this attitude in our culture that strength is of a certain presentation. And my belief is that having emotions and being in touch with them is actually quite strong. And that's what I'm trying to teach with our son. And I feel that way. My husband's a great example of that. He's very in touch with his emotions. But there are some people that aren't. And when you get to those vulnerable, like, oh, I'm feeling attacked, or she's hit something that I'm already insecure about, then I'm just going to puff up, because that's a buffer between me and that feeling. I'm uncomfortable with uncomfortable feelings, so I'm going to push them away and attack back. And so like if someone were to respond to me that way, and that's happened in past relationships, I try and kind of call them out, like, whoa, not angrily, but like, my goodness, did you think I was trying to attack you? I wasn't trying to attack you. And that can just be disarming, because they'd be like, oh shoot, like I didn't mean to come back as defensively as I did. And just like bring it to the surface of like, hey, I was just asking what we're eating tonight. I wasn't saying that, why haven't you made dinner? And so often we tell ourselves, we make up our own stories of they said this or they did this, and that means X, Y, Z. And our partners do the same thing. And if we can like, oh my goodness, that was a bigger response. I was just asking this. What did you hear me say? Can kind of help disarm.
I love that. What did you hear me say?
Yeah, because they probably heard an attack, which may be what you were trying to do, may not be what you're trying to do. It depends on the day.
Yeah, totally.
Small
yeah, you're thinking, Chelsea, what's going on?
My thought is, I don't know. My feelings about that is different now. My feelings are, especially when I'm pretty serious, if I've written something out, if I have taken you somewhere, I'm having a coffee. I'm a very type A person. I will have a spreadsheet and these are my talking points. These are, like, if I've gotten to this point, usually it's something I care a lot about. And usually it is, in a way, a critique, right? Like, it's like, you know what? Everything else I can it's fine. But I'm just going to make it up. Like, I'm going to make this up. Our son cannot play football, because there's too many head injuries, and I think it's a brutal sport, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, like, and maybe it's like, I know for him, it's like this bonding thing. It's so important. He loves football. It's like the number one thing he wanted for his son. And in a way, I know it's going to come with defensiveness, and I know it's going to, because I'm like critiquing what he thinks about something. Like, we have two different views on something. And so I never really expect that he's not going to be uncomfortable or defensive. Because, like, I feel like if someone also critiqued me on like something I felt was a truth, I would be uncomfortable and defensive. So I think of it as like, it's part of the journey. Like, the first Band-Aid, yeah, I'm not really expecting him to be like, wow, what a wonderful idea about football. You're right. Like, it isn't just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I always know that usually the first big pass will be like, no, the response is no. And like, well, you just blah, like, these are like the things that come. And I'm really like short. I'm really to the point. I like to write things down, and then I bring it up like a week later, and then another week later. And then by the time it's like the fifth time I brought the stimulus, then there's like, I'm like, okay, now we can have
desensitized.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think of it as like a reasonable thing that someone's not going to be defensive when they're being critiqued about their truth, the way they see the world. And it's like, we're never living each other's lives, so there's so much that it's so hard, like, I work the male role and I do all this work and I work night shifts and I'm doing all this crazy finance stuff, and it's like, oh my God, you're going to come at me and tell me I need to back the car into the driveway, and like, you're mad that I didn't back the car, and it's just like,
this is a real problem.
This is a real problem, people. I'll be like, dude, I fell asleep in the parking lot, and then, I pissed my pants at work because I'm vomiting, because I'm pregnant, and I had to like put the towel, I thought about you, and I'm just like, F parking the car in backwards, and it's like, it's just, but then of course by the third or fourth time I'll be like, oh, like I can totally park a car in backwards. And like it had nothing really to do with like you not seeing how much work I'm doing and asking me to do one more thing. It's just like, it really, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like it's all part of the journey of when we're talking. I don't expect it to be this like perfect little like therapy session. The therapy session comes from talking it a lot. I don't know.
I love that one. I mean, that example, obviously you came up with on the fly, but from how you delivered it, you were using an I statement. I mean, you were talking about, these are my thoughts on this topic. So even if he does come back with some defensiveness because his thoughts on the topic are contrary to yours, you weren't critiquing him. You were just sharing how you feel for your son's safety, for the well-being of your son. He's sharing about his ideas on the well-being of your guy's son with football being a bonding experience. But also what I love about it is you're clear. You're so clear. You're like, these are the rules to the game we're playing. So let's play this game. I think so often, especially once we've already built up a level of resentment, we do the hints. We do the like short responses. We have our opinions, but like they come out in weird ways that we're like, I can't believe he didn't even like, don't you know? You're so like, don't you know that I'm mad at you? Or don't you know that I care so strongly about this, that I think you're being stupid? Like that would be the critique, is you're dumb for thinking that this is a good sport for our kid. But you're saying, I'm really concerned about the head injuries. Like those are different approaches. And I think you're spot on with the idea of like, this is a long play game of, I'm going to bring this up. It's not probably going to go over great, but like, let's let that simmer for a bit and then we'll retouch it and just kind of see how it evolves over time. And I hear that a lot of times, like, I told my husband and he did it once, but then he forgot the rest of the time. And sometimes you got to just keep building it, build those muscles. If, these pathways haven't been forged frequently enough, then they're bumpy roads in their brains. They need like smooth highways, and that takes a lot of repetition.
Yeah, talk about the invisible labor of motherhood. I mean, that is invisible labor. Mm-hmm. The patience and the kind of breaking the pathways of like literally like what they learned in their childhood. But yeah, it's worth it because unless you want to root for the other team, you're just gonna have to like. Which I've considered, by the way. Okay, so before we finish today, what is one message you would love for all mamas to know?
Being a mom is, I think, a harder thing than you could ever imagine. Before you become a mom, I think you just imagine the joy and the like warmth and your heart growing. And the reality is that does exist, but it's also a lot and it's taxing. And I think I hear about mom guilt so much, especially if we're the working mom, or especially if we're the stay-at-home mom. If we're the stay-at-home mom, we're not doing enough with our kids. If we're the working mom, we don't have enough time with our kids. If our marriages are great, then maybe we feel too focused on our spouse. If our marriages aren't going great, then we feel like we're too distracted and elsewhere. And so my message to moms is just, if you're leading with love with your kids, you are doing a fabulous, fabulous job. Cut yourself some slack, give yourself some grace. Your kids love you and you're doing great.
Oh. And if that wasn't good enough, guys, you totally have to check out her children's book series, Capable Kiddos, because it's exactly that, awesome and helpful and cute.
It's very cute. It's very cute. My favorite so far being The Not So Friendly Friend.
Thank you. That's this one. I've got it right here.
It's so cute. It's about like how to set boundaries, and it's very well written, and my girls were glued to it. So go ahead, check it out. She's on Amazon, ChristinaFurnival.com, Capable Kiddos Books on Instagram, and Christina.Furnival also on Instagram. She's got a lot of content. She's got a blog. She's got books. She's fabulous. She's amazing. And thank you so much for being on our podcast and chatting with us about our favorite stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. And I don't even remember now exactly how we got connected, but Ada, my youngest, is one, and she wears Raising Mama pajamas every night. That's our go-to. And we even took them traveling. I actually have a blog post about it because they were just so cozy and comfortable and perfect for our travel to the UK, 11-hour flight. She wore Raising Mamas. And actually she was wearing the It's Okay to Ask for Help ones. And it was a stressful travel day. And every time I saw her, I was like, I can breathe. It's okay to ask for help. We got this.
It's kind of a quirky idea, but
I love it.
It kind of works.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you guys.
Bye. Bye. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future conversations. And follow us on Instagram at Raising Mama Podcast for more updates, resources, and a peek behind the scenes. See you next time.